Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Buffalo Bills Roundtable. If you are just joining us from over at the Buffalo Fanatics channel, Zbot and I were just going through an exhilarating 7 and a 5 round mock draft. Kev, I think you'd have been impressed with a couple of our drafts we did, man.
Okay. You did multiple, I'm assuming.
Yeah, we ran quick.
Yeah. Well, so with two of them and stuff like that. And a lot of the players were stuff that me and Zbot remembered from what you told us about this draft.
Yeah, excited.
Like using our Kevin analysis to good use. Very good.
That's what I like to hear. That's great.
So a big Mason McCormick guy.
Good.
Huge Mason McCormick guy at the left guard position going into it. But folks, listen, if you are just tuning in, as you know, voluntary workout program is well underway. And we ended up hearing from not only Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott, but also Josh Allen. And we wanted to sort of take this time and discuss some of the key takeaways that we got from some of these meetings. We all know that a lot of this is coaches speak. Someone once said that Sean McDermott can say everything and nothing at the exact same time. And then with Josh Allen, obviously, it was on some PR stuff when he was talking about the Stephon Diggs situation, sort of giving us a good idea of what Beane might be thinking during the draft. So we just kind of wanted to unpack everything that we learned from today and what hints we may have seen. Please do us a favor, smash that like button on your way in. And start off with Z. Z, what was one of your biggest takeaways from all the meetings as far as a sign or is what's going to keep you up at night from what you heard this evening?
These don't do it for me because everything I hear, I can take it one of two ways. I can say, oh, he's being completely straightforward with me. I should take everything he says as gospel. Or he's telling me all of these things because he wants the absolute opposite to be the outcome. So a lot of times with these things, I take them with a massive, massive grain of salt. Now, we do know Brandon Beane today said that he does not like giving up future capital. But the way I look at it is the way I was just explaining. Does that mean I don't want to give up future capital so that you don't think I'm going to give up future capital a week from tonight and end up going and doing so and getting that guy early on in the draft as opposed to staying at 28? Or is Beane going to stick around 28 and not give up that capital? Like we've also seen some, talks be circled around that type of outcome for the Bills in the first round. So from Beane and McDermott, nothing crazy. The more interesting element to me today was hearing from Josh Allen. First time we've really heard from him since the Diggs move has been made. They were also asking him about his input on the draft decision-making next week. I did find it funny, and I just love the human element that you get sometimes where Allen was like, I've been doing my own analysis. I've been watching the YouTube highlight reel, just like we all do. I loved that. But what was interesting is he did say that last year, all he did was text Brandon Beane 2 words on night one, and that was Dalton Kincaid, and that is who the Bills walked away with. I have to imagine that Allen has some level of knowledge as to what the Bills are going to try and do. I don't think he actually knows what the full plan is, but I think everybody sort of knows what the Bills' plan is. So if Allen doesn't, then, there would be no excuse for him not to. Based on what I took away from him, I thought he looked great for one. He just looked healthy. He was asked about his health in the shoulder. He said he's been feeling great. But I also feel like when he was questioned about the wide receiver, the big takeaway everybody's taken from today, not what Allen said, but what McDermott said, what Beane said, how you don't need a bona fide wide receiver one in this league to win. That to me, I don't know how you guys felt, but that was the biggest smoke screen hint of them all to me. I just feel like that was the best way of him saying, because everybody knows what they have to do. So that was the best way that he could possibly phrase, we don't need to do what you think is inevitable for us to do. So that was my one big takeaway from him. And then with Allen, like you said, he kind of just ran through the PR gamut with the Diggs thing. He did say he'll always be a brother to him, which is, something that goes maybe a bit beyond what the status quo would have been on a sheet to read off. But, Allen says all the things that you want your quarterback to say. And I think if it were up to him, he would want Beane to go wide receiver in this round one. And I think if it were up to Beane, he probably would too. But to what extent, we have the same questions today that we had before the presser, I would say. and we'll find out 1 week from tonight. And that I cannot wait, fellas. It's this close.
So, Kevin, talk to me about some of your key takeaways before we start diving into specifics, because he said something about Diggs that I certainly want to point out a little later. But go ahead.
I mean, there's a couple. He's generally, I think I saw someone that pulled the data on his comments over the last 5 years and cross-referenced it. He's fairly truthful. I think it's fairly high on the truth scale of what he says. I do buy that he doesn't want to trade an asset. I fully buy that. If there is a range that makes sense to come up for, any one of those top receivers, I did have the Raz creator, Kentley Platt, on yesterday on my show, and he told me that he says it's 0% chance that all 3 of the top receivers will be good. He thinks it's 0% chance. Based on his data, would tell you that 2 of the 3 are going to be good.
Yes.
No way.
Yeah.
No way.
Wow.
Dude.
Hello, gentlemen.
An actual round table.
Yeah.
Dude.
It's finally round.
Dude.
How you doing, gentlemen?
Mario.
What's going on,
What
man?
up, dude?
I missed the beginning. What are we talking about? The Chiefs?
Man, right now we're just unpacking all of the key takeaways that we ended up getting from all the press conferences and everything.
Oh, yeah.
And Kev was going off, finishing some of his keys, but there's some specifics I want to talk about, and that I think you might like. But Kev, continue. By the way, Mario, good to see you, bro.
I think the main point is if you fact check him over the years, he gives a lot of truth in his statements. So I think that's what makes him interesting more than a McDermott, who just says things, generally speaking, and just kind of company line stuff. But if you look into it, I don't believe he would like to trade a future asset, to come up with a current asset. But I could be wrong. Obviously, there may be a position or time that would make sense for him to come up and make that deal. And then you couple it with you don't necessarily need a receiver 1 comment. And I think you can read between the lines of he'd prefer to stay near his pick again. And if it's a receiver, that so be it, and he'll get a receiver 1 that way, because he did mention there's varying skill sets in this draft. There's a little bit of everything. I think that's setting you up for them telling you we don't feel like we need to come up, and we've been disappointed in the past. We don't feel like we need to come up and score Sammy Watkins, even if he could have been good with a real quarterback. But it doesn't matter. The risk is not worth the reward, generally speaking. And generally speaking, the hit rate is very low at receiver in the first round. It's actually the only position that has a higher hit rate in the second round than first round.
Really?
The only position. Yep.
0% chance the top 3 receivers are going to be good.
And that's
all 3 of them will be good.
All three of them.
I have to agree with that 100%. That's just the way the cookie crumbles with these drafts. I mean, it's a guarantee. It's the same thing with quarterback, right? I mean, there's a reason why Allen is where he is, and Darnold's hopped around the league, Baker's hopped around the league, and then there's Lamar and Allen still sitting around. It's just the way that these statistics end up going every single time. Those 3 wide receivers are going to go in the top 10, but it is inevitable that one of those guys is just not going to be the answer. And you'd have to assume it's probably going to be one of the guys who goes to the worst situation. That's why the thought of the Patriots just saying, oh, we'll stick with Brissett for a while and get our wide receiver doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. But one of these guys for sure is going to have to maybe not bust out, right? But they're not going to be a top 10 caliber guy when you look back on it.
Now, Mario, I did sort of want to pick your brain because I know that we really
it's a scary place to be, Dan. I'm just telling you.
Wait, what now you said?
I said it's a scary place to be. I'm just letting you know.
It's a scary place to be. Listen, man, we haven't talked since the Diggs trade, etc.
Yes.
But I mean, I think that there's a massive glaring need, at least from a fan perspective, that they are hell-bent on getting a wide receiver number 1. I mean, we're seeing mock drafts where people try and trade up into the top 10, certain targets, etc. What's your thought process based off of the press conferences today, from any potential tidbits we got from Brandon Beane? And who do you think is genuinely on the big board for us as far as a type of player that we're targeting?
It's interesting because, you look at where the Buffalo Bills were in 2020, and obviously you had a young quarterback who was very raw and green. So what they did was they decided to trade that pick, knowing that there was a big wide receiver class going in there, but you didn't know who you were going to get. you didn't know Jefferson was going to drop down there. And the systems that these guys go into is just as important as the players themselves. So, I mean, Henry Ruggs was taken 12th that draft. Jalen Reagor was taken 1 pick right before Jefferson. So you could have gotten one of those 2 guys. And how much of a dumpster fire would that have been? But then fast forwarding to now, you know, I always like to put on the tin hat. It could be a little bit of posturing. He could just say, you know, he wants to play the cards close to the vest and what he's saying. But I always go off the question of this. If he trades up, now they're in a completely different position than they were, let's say, a month ago, because now you have $56 million of dead cap. And how are you going to pay some of these guys? So we typically have seen Brandon Beane most of the times in the draft. He's moving and shaking. He's leaving with 6, 7 picks. He's got 10. Does he leave with 10? I don't think so, but he may have no choice because you got to fill this roster out with guys that can play and guys that can play now. So to me, could be a little bit of posturing. He could already have a deal in place. He could be talking around with a bunch of other guys, but unless you can 100% get the big 3, I don't see him moving a lot of picks and a lot of future assets. But let me ask you guys this. If he gives up a lot of assets, moves up, gets one of those horses, are we a receiver away from going to the championship? That's a great, because if you have an injury to any one of those guys that you have currently on the starting roster, the guy behind him, I'm not 100%, I don't believe 100% in a lot of those guys that are right behind the top guys on this roster. So that's the question I've been always asking is the follow-up. Okay, you get Harrison, who's an animal. You get Neighbors. You get Odunze. You go to any of these guys. What happens next? What do you do? If you don't pick until 133 after you give up all your assets, what do you do next?
Dude. And see, that's like sort of something that's pretty difficult to always wrap your head around too, because injuries happen all the damn time. Look at our defense. We were in body bags by halfway through the season, and our depth finally ended up catching up to us.
You don't draft contingency plans. I know that. I know that sounds very weird, but the point is, I don't see him moving anymore. I think Kevin said it a little bit earlier. I don't see him moving any more than he is. I don't see him moving out of the 20s, because what second round grade do you have on some of these receivers? Because we all know teams grade 15 to 18 guys as first round talent. After that, you got guys that are calling you up to try to get back into the first round to get that 5th-year option. Will he take that call and maybe get 2 seconds, knowing he can double up at the wide receiver position in the second round?
I like the idea of that. I don't know if he would die. I don't think I just don't see him taking back-to-back wide receiver in the second round if they were to do it. I think he'll take one and then go somewhere else with it. But it would depend on where in the second round they get to. A lot of the times when I try to trade back into the second round with the 28th pick, it's tough to get 2 solid second round picks for it. Because it's barely a first round pick. You know what I mean? You're marginally moving up into the first round. So to me, it's tough to be able to get that type of asset that you're looking for and then do what you're talking about. But I do like the idea of it, because getting 2 guys, like we were just talking about earlier, the statistics of one of these guys or multiple of these guys not working out is always high. So the more guys you get, the better chance you have. Plus, we wouldn't want to turn down an additional wide receiver on top of the one we wound up walking away from. So
yeah, if you think about it, when they traded for Diggs, they still drafted Davis and Hodges.
Right.
Isn't that insane? Okay, we got our guy, and they kind of mailed in the rest of that draft almost. So
it's crazy, because one of the main things, one of the themes, and outside of the subtle shots at Stephon Diggs, there was 10 of them, between all the press conferences. You could tell the theme. I mean, as soon as when I heard so with Josh Allen saying his last memory was, I'll remember what kind of receiver he was to me. I'm like, come on, dude. Yeah, most definitely. But
Dan, I got a point for you too, Dan. Brandon Beane's traded for 3 vet receivers in his era and almost a 4th. So you cannot rule out someone like Cortland Sutton or somebody on the market that could intrigue him, because it limits his risk. It allows him to trade what I've been hearing to be a day 3 pick for him. And then you can still stack your roster. And also what you can do with a Cortland Sutton contract that you can't do with others, you can stick Denver with some of that money. You can't do that with a lot of the other deals that you would potentially trade for. So there's a couple ways to go, but 3 vet receivers he's traded for in his day as the Bills GM and wanted Emmanuel Sanders, but ended up signing him in free agency instead the following season. So that's something to keep in mind.
Do you know who you guys can get without trading any assets or taking on any cap? Well, serious cap.
Who's that?
OBJ.
I was going to say Odell Beckham Jr.
I'm out.
Or Michael.
So are you on that train?
I'm only saying it because you know how the NFL is with connections. Adam Henry, the wide receivers coach, was in New York with OBJ and in Cleveland with OBJ.
Best friends with his mom too.
Yeah. So you're sitting there and you're going, if the NFL is all about connections and how big his voice is in that room, former collegiate offensive coordinator, who knows what's going to happen? I mean, I'm not championing it. I'm saying if you need a vet, if you guys are talking about vets, this conversation went to that. I love Sutton, but OBJ is another name that has connections to the wide receivers coach in Buffalo.
And see, it's funny too, because I feel like one of the themes, especially with Brandon Beane, when he was talking about what sort of receivers he was looking for to add to this offense, it was high character and it was rack after the two. So like I was starting to think of like some names particularly that a lot of Bills fans have been hoping to come. I feel like AD Mitchell is probably out of the equation with that, especially with so that one article and stuff like that came out saying that he was virtually uncoachable, had a bad attitude. He just gives up on his routes. He doesn't finish it. But I'm kind of curious in y'all's eyes, like, who does that really put at the top of the big board, at least what we're assuming based off of those two principles right there? It was rack, personality, and then I also think buyer beware with injuries. So does that like sort of align what guys we might be looking for? Say that we stay put at 28, for example.
Troy Franklin would have to be one that sticks out to you because
he's worked out twice for us,
multiple things. Like, I'm not saying he's a top of Kevin's draft board, but what I'm saying is I think he's toward the top of the Bills. And I think he connects the dots, is said to have the most sophisticated route tree. He gets open, he can catch it deep, he plucks the ball out of the air. He does pretty much everything you want, and he's being slept on mainly because of the offense he was in a little bit, but and a little bit of that thinner frame. But he's a Devontae Smith clone, and that's very much so what the Bills would want in him. And we'll see if that turns to be with that route tree, if that turns to be someone that they're interested in. But I think that's immediately who I point to when I see it. But could they go with a contested catch guy like Keon Coleman, a guy that is always going to be someone that can come down with the ball, but is never actually open? That could be a route they go as well. But I mean, to me, it sticks out. If the injuries aren't bad with Ladd McConkey, I still think he makes sense for what they're doing. But they, obviously have to go through the injury comps there. I don't have access to his injury records. But if they clear him, he would very much so make sense in that. And then he can't count out Worthy. He's not just a speed guy, or so they're saying. To me, I'm always wary of the speed guys. They bust at a higher rate. Look at John Ross. Look at a couple of the other players. They bust at an extremely high rate. But when you hit, you hit. That may be intriguing for them with the rack. I saw an advanced analytics chart a couple of days ago that showed drop rate and yards after catch, and Worthy was number one between the two factors.
Interesting. So Mario, who's on top? Like, who are your draft crushes for wide receiver, man, at 28? And so who do you like and who do you hate?
I think ultimately the consensus of a lot of people that I've been talking to and I've seen has been Thomas, if he's still there. Doubling back on Coleman, I like Coleman a little bit, but what I do is I sometimes look at like some of the wide receiver, like what the routes that they run in college, and you try to sit there and you look at it and I was just pulling up Coleman real quick because I wanted to take a look at it. And he had 87 targets. And then when you look at the breakdown of that, is that 19 of those were screens, 13 were hitches, and 10 were all goes. He only caught 2 of the all goes. So you're sitting there and you start to break down this thing. Like, really, what's the connection here? What's the thing that the Buffalo Bills need? Do they need a field stretcher? Obviously, then get a guy that can turn and burn. I mean, that's the one thing I haven't been. I feel like I'm outside of the Buffalo Bills bubble in this category because I want a center. Give me a center. Give me somebody other than McGovern in the middle of this
McGovern,
line.
baby?
I don't know.
100 snaps in the NFL. You don't
Listen. The admission to ride the Josh Allen offensive line train is very high. And I know giving it to a rookie is kind of worrisome, but when you go and you draft those guys in the first round, those interior linemen, those guys are the ones that, whether or not Allen can get the pass off to some of these horses that are running the routes on the outside. I mean, there's a reason why you're paying a tight end a ton of money. Obviously, he took a pay cut this year, and you drafted one in the first round. You want to get the ball out of Allen's hands as fast as possible. So if you want a field stretcher so it opens up everything underneath for, Samuel, Kincaid, and Knox, fine. But none of these guys, other than the top three, jump off the page at me, and they all just seem like the same guy to me. So I know there's vast differences between all of them and all this stuff, and then all these news is going to come out because we're a week away from the draft. It's what's going to happen, all this other nonsense. But unless you're completely in love with a guy and you think he can turn your offense around like the top three, I think you wait. I think you just sit back and wait. What falls to you?
So you're a Jackson Powers Johnson kind of guy.
I am 100% Jackson. I already bought his jersey. That's how much I am a Jackson Powers guy.
There's definitely some credence to be had for having an interior O-line with potentially 4 to 5 years of talent there, and you can move McGovern back to his guard spot. Interesting about with the restructure of McGovern, he costs $9 million next year guaranteed against the there's no way out. So it looks like a center deal. So that's what they're thinking.
That's a cheap guard deal too. That's a pretty cheap guard deal, is it? Do you have the numbers, Kev, the average guards in the NFL?
Not handy, but it's probably not far from there. Yeah. If you pull up top spend at average salaries, let's take a look at guard. But generally speaking, they move the money, so he's going to be starting on this line. But to the point, is it left guard or is it center? It does seem like they like Edwards. That's the funny.
Yeah. I think that's a Cromer guy.
That's
100% a Cromer guy. So
that's a couple of things to watch out for. But yeah, the center path makes sense. I mean, ultimately, you're looking for a 5, 7, 10-year center. Pair him with Osiris Torrance. Hopefully, the progress and progression of Spencer Brown after not having that back injury all season.
Yeah.
You have a fairly good looking young offensive line. So it's not outlandish. They definitely need a center in this draft. It just, is it the first round? Is it the second round? Or do they like one of those guys from Michigan or, Wisconsin later on in the day 3?
Yeah. And one of those things that's going to creep up is that both Rousseau and Brown are up for contracts next year. And those are high value, high price positions. And with the dead cap you're going to incur, and Allen's maybe one of these years, you can't restructure Allen. You have to just eat it. What year is that they decide to do that? So, I mean, they draft tackles every year. So just book one of those 3 5th-round picks is going to be a tackle. Just know that. One of them might be a running back too. I'm not sure. But the point is they're going to try to double down and get some bodies in camp. But the problem is that depending on how many he leaves with, we've seen guys poached off of this roster from other teams because they're like, we'll let the Bills do the work for us. And then when they try to put him on the practice squad, we'll take him.
And if he plays guard next year, McGovern will be the 25th paid guard in the league at $10 million roughly. So he'll be the 25th paid guard if he plays guard next season.
Mr. McGovern, it was funny too. Did y'all catch that or whatever with Josh Allen? He was talking about the biggest adjustment.
Where he plays hands.
Center. It's where he places his hands on his ass. He was just like, like with Mitch was like a little lower to the left, and I was just like, oh. All right. He goes, it's just going to take some repetition of where I put my hands on his ass is what's going to have to happen. It's going to be an adjustment. And something I feel that like a lot of us really aren't talking about as far as concerns, because I mean, when Diggs like basically fell off the face of the planet last year, halfway through the season, like we were still fine. Right. I mean, in fact, I felt like we were better once we stopped making him a focal point into this overall offense. But that center situation, that's going to be a roll of the dice.
Yeah, the whole Diggs situation, I think, was paired with the fact that Allen seemed like he was running twice as much as he was with Dorsey. Mm-hmm. I think you were at a point, there has to be an asterisk next to that because Brady at that point was like, listen, I got to have him run. I got to have him run. I got to have him get out of the pocket and do something, or else we're not going to win any games.
Yeah, they ran it considerably more once Brady took over. And I think that is exactly what it had to do with. Because the emphasis going into the season last year was to preserve Josh Allen's health, and you could tell that there was an emphasis on that early on, and it kind of took him out of his game a bit And you could tell he was far more comfortable towards the end of the year. It just seemed like things were more designed around doing what this team does best. And with that, we also discovered that this team can succeed with a intermediate pass game and running the ball more than they throw it. So I thought today out of the press conference from Allen, I thought it was more noticeable that he was going to be missing Mitch Morse beyond missing Stephon Diggs. You could just tell the way he was talking about it that he was, he's going to certainly be missing Morse coming up this season.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, most definitely. One actual statement he said about that, well, like after he said, "Oh yeah, he's my brother forever. He was great." A couple of questions after that fact, he's like, "Yeah, some of these younger receivers that might come in, and so I'm looking for hardworking, and so I'm looking for somebody that's not going to complain when they don't get the football." And I was like, "Holy shit, dude!" There's so many slight digs all across, man. With McDermott, it was just like, "Oh yeah, man, most definitely. Like we're here, like culture." Vibes are really high right now. Like we're not looking for me players. We're rebuilding the culture and stuff. I feel like as long as you read between the lines, like just based off of Josh Allen's expression, beans, et cetera, I feel like all of the rumors we heard were absolutely true. And that's something that we need to accept.
Well, I mean, for the trading for a receiver. I still 4 of them. He's done it 4 times.
You're talking during the draft, though, right?
Yeah. I mean, at some point during trade for a receiver. Yeah,
because obviously you can't. Before you got to have enough to cover your draft picks before you even go in. But at the draft, it's weird. We were talking about it this week on hashtag. There's like almost a financial pause in the NFL during the draft because so many players and picks get moved that. Okay, we'll give you that draft time to figure it out. You can make your moves, and then you got to figure it out. So, yeah, definitely at the draft, there might be some players shuffled around.
Do you think Sutton's a legit possibility, Kev? Is that something you could see happening?
The stylistic fit makes sense. Also, his ability to win in the end zone. He's one of the best in the league at it. All the data would point to it. We saw it live in Buffalo. Like a ridiculous play that should never have happened.
That's true.
He kind of replaces that Gabe role. The reason he didn't make sense last year or years past was, you had Gabe Davis.
Right.
But many people are saying stylistically, he would compare a good amount to Gabe Davis. So how are you going to utilize both? How does that make any sense? But the other thing you can do with him is, to the cap point earlier, is absolutely Denver's going to need to eat some of that money. And then next year you have a team option of about $13 to $14 million on the cap that you can exercise or cut him or trade him or do whatever you want or extend him. But I think at the moment, he could make sense if he's actually available between a day 3 pick, sticking Denver with some of the money in the first place of it too. So you may get a very value player and then have a team option on him next year if he works out. So I think all of those things combined is someone to watch. I'm not sitting here saying he's the number 1 receiver in the NFL, but I do think that stylistically he could make sense to a complement of a top 60 receiver that I'm pretty confident the Bills will take a first or second round receiver.
So that would be more of a Gabe Davis replacement, not necessarily the plug in wide receiver 1.
Correct.
I like.
Now the question is, would that be an improvement? So would that be a better Gabe Davis?
It's up to you, your opinion, right? It's up to what you think. Many people would say yes. But Gabe Davis did some stuff well and he got paid for it. So it's up to you. It's up to what you think as the players to go, but there would be arguments either way.
I would, I'll just take Ayuk. He's better than both of them.
Yeah. Right.
Agreed. If they're willing to do that, where do I sign?
Yeah. People like to talk about the financials of Ayuk. He's guaranteed $14 million this year. Obviously you could make that $14 million and put it in as a bank account right after the draft, make it a signing bonus, extend him. You can do something with his contract. I don't know what the hold up is in San Francisco. He wants to get paid like a 1, but he's not a 1 there. I don't understand. He's behind Kittle, he's behind McCaffrey, and he's behind Samuel. So, I always have reservations about guys that aren't 1s that the team signs them to be a 1. But I think your first option as of right now is Dalton Kincaid on this offense. It goes Kincaid, Cook, and then Samuel. That's mine.
See, I see so much chaos across the Twitterverse thinking that, I feel like nobody thinks that any of our younger players like Dalton Kincaid is not going to take a step next year. or that Shakir is not going to take another step next year, and so on and so forth. Or even with James Cook, I feel like I remember the exact same conversation where last year we were all up in arms about, oh my God, what are we going to do with middle linebacker, dude? And like Edmonds is gone. What's going to happen? And then enter somebody that we got in the mid rounds, a year before, and he comes in and he takes that place by itself. So I know we all want a crazy wide receiver, and I do, right? Like, trust me, I'm not going to be pissed off if we send over the farm for Rome Odunze at number 9. I'm not going to be pissed off whatsoever. I'm probably going to go on some huge rant about it. But
no, you?
No, me. Yeah, dude. However, I mean, I'll be honest with you, man. I mean, like, I still would have all the confidence in the world that we would still win the AFCs next year. Say, for example, that all we had was Cortland Sutton and Curtis Samuel.
They won't be third, like I keep hearing from everybody else. That's for sure. One with that. I mean, I can't even argue against it. I keep going. Like, if Miami couldn't do it last year, then it's just going to be a wait till I see it, because that was on a silver platter for him. But man, it would feel like a lot of blowing smoke up my own ass to sit here and say that they would be taken first with some sort of certainty if that's what they walked out there with.
Yeah.
Two under 40 degrees. Never. It's undefeated. 2 under 40 degrees is just an undefeated stat.
Yeah. As long as we can play Miami in Buffalo in December, that's a guaranteed win. And then I think we got 2 in New England, but I said that last year and paid good money to go inside Gillette and watch that game.
Has he won under 45 degrees yet? Seriously. Like,
has he?
No, in his whole career, I don't believe it.
Like, that's a thing.
100% a thing.
It may be 50 degrees.
Not just a slight thing. Like, it is like that performance against the Chiefs was abysmal. It wasn't even remotely competitive. Yeah.
He's 0-6 when the temperature peaks at 45 degrees or lower during one of his games. Yeah.
How's he only played?
So it's not even starting at 45 degrees. Like, so it could be a nice evening in Green Bay starting at 60, but then, like, third quarter,
his best chance was 2022 against the Bills with the division clinching game where it came down to Tyler Bass doing the snow angel at the end. That was by far his best chance. And that was more on McDaniel that game than anything. But yeah, like I keep saying, everyone, Aaron Rodgers back off the Achilles at 40 years old. Surely we can pencil them in at the very least at 2. Maybe 1. And then, Miami with a 3-game lead in December last year. Well, surely they're going to get it done this year. So I just, once again, with all this stuff circulating the Bills, and there is a lot. I mean, just hearing Allen talk about it today when he was like, I've never played here without Poyer and Hyde. I've never played without Mitch Morse.
It's a second team, basically.
It's a lot. I mean, someone even asked him point blank, which we've all been saying for a while now, but like, does this feel like the next chapter of your career? And he said yes, because it is. But to that point, there's no reason to believe, off of what we saw last year, when the Dolphins were in the easiest of circumstances for them to win it the last decade or so, and the Bills were in the toughest circumstance to win it themselves last year, the Bills were the one that came out on top. And it all came down to one final game between the two. The Bills offense did nothing for 2 quarters until Deontay Hardy took one to the house, about 100 yards on a punt return, and that was essentially the game. And Tua still had a chance at the end. And if you go back and watch the HBO cinematic version of that interception at the end, which is just beautiful, thank God for Hard Knocks. I mean, he might as well just taken the ball, put it on the ground, and walked off the field. That was the equivalent of it. So I'm so sick and tired of hearing that the Bills are this easily replaced when we just got the best example ever last year of how they're not, because they were in the worst possible scenario last year and the Dolphins were in the best and they still couldn't get it done. And then if your other excuse is the Jets, give me a break.
Give me a break. Oh, no. We got some Jets fans in here getting angry. I love it.
That's not to say the Jets they're going to be and should be better. I mean, there's no question about it, but it's just, there's no median ever when you're talking about them. Like it's either the highest of highs or the lowest of lows. And I would just be way more concerned with keeping Rodgers healthy for a month and then take it from there. Right. I mean, that would be a major, major, major concern of mine. But it doesn't even seem to be talked about all that much. It's just, Rodgers is back. So, I mean, for God's sakes, they CGI inserted him into the jersey drop the other day. Did you see that? Can't even get him on the field for a promo. So, come on.
As far as the Dolphins go, until somebody tells Tua he's right-handed, I'm not believing anything that comes out of the Dolphins. I swear to God. It's abysmal.
And everybody wants to talk about how much worse the Bills got, too. No one wants to talk about the fact that the Dolphins lost numerous starters as well. It's not like the Bills are the only one who lost all these guys. So it's a gauntlet. It's as it should be. It's supposed to be. That's how it's been set up over the last couple of years, and the Bills are the reason for that. But it's not going to be a cakewalk for anybody, and that includes the Bills. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, what is y'all's confidence level on Babich? And so I know that news hasn't come out yet whether or not that he's going to be calling plays. And it's almost to a point where I've been asking myself, there's been a couple of signs, like we get that DB's coach from Miami, which was predominantly man coverage defense. Somehow Kyer Elam survived, is still on this roster. Are we potentially looking at a sort of revamped identity for our defense next year? Or do you think it's business as usual with different personnel? Start off with Mario there.
Well, you had incumbents for 7 years on the back end there, which is unheard of in today's NFL. The fact that they kept Poyer and Hyde together for that long, I can't believe that they did it. I think if there's one thing that McDermott likes, he likes being the head coach of the Bills.
Yeah.
You've already fired one OC. So are you going to take over control of complete off of that defense again? And then if things start to go sour, fire Brady? You don't get too many of those shots, man. So I think what he's going to do is it's going to be obviously the philosophy that he wants. But Babich came in under McDermott. So it's going to be one of those things. I think he needs to relinquish control, and he has to oversee the entire game. His game management is abysmal. When he was the defensive coordinator, it was even worse. So I think he needs to delegate the calls to Babich and start thinking about his lineage in the NFL as far as the branches of the guys that he coaches that becomes coaches of other places. So that's whether or not he does that is going to be a very telling sign. But for me, for the Bills and the defense to move forward and have those little wrinkles here and there, the fact that Kyer Elam is still here, I think Babich's voice in that room is a little louder than we think it is.
Mm.
Plus, I think McDermott already insinuated that he won't be exclusively calling the defense this year, right? Didn't he already kind of come out and say that?
So I thought he said that he hadn't made a decision yet of whether or not.
They never say anything. I swear to God.
Yeah. That's actually foolish of me to think he said anything definitive. But I just thought I had heard something.
Sean, it's cold out today. Well, you know, we're one day at a time.
Depends on what you're wearing,
Kind of chilly.
Yeah.
And so, but Stefanski just better damn make sure that he still, just calls plays with Ken Dorsey. That's for damn sure. That's all we can say. Kevin.
I mean, break it down a little bit in terms of Bobby Babich and what he's done in his position group. Started with Nichols and Taron Johnson. Obviously he had a lot to say with that safety duo we just talked about for 7 years, and then went to the linebacker spot, a position that after Edmonds that he helped see continue the development of Milano to an All-Pro year, as well as the development of Bernard and maybe Edmonds' best year to get him paid. So ultimately he coaches guy he may be a really good developer of players. He's young. He's got the aggressive mindset, seemingly was at least in demand by at least one or two others. There's been conflicting reports how many other jobs may have wanted him for the DC. I think the Bills had to offer some form of it's your defense. You're going to set yourself up to potentially take a head coaching job. And just as many more defensive coaches were hired this cycle than offensive coaches. So it's still a thing. If you have a mindset and you can coach players and develop players, you get jobs and you interview well. And people think you can build a roster. And I think he's going to prove that he can. He's got the player development side. I think he's going to want his defense. And there's already been some rumblings within the front office that their defensive backs coach was fired because Bobby Babich wanted to play Kyer Elam and play a different style of defense and saw the potential there. And Brandon Beane agreed. So that has been some rumblings and rumors that from people I trust. So the Bills actually chose the player and the defensive coordinator over some of the position coaches, what McDermott has been very reluctant to do. So I think you'll see him take the full accountability at the defensive coordinator position I think Bobby Babich will be the one calling it. If not, McDermott's really putting his neck out there and really going to cause himself some problems. So I think giving it to Babich is the move. And I think you see that this season. I think he'll be, by this preseason, he'll be the one calling the plays. Everyone will be asking. And then I do think it'll be his defense for the most part. And McDermott can continue more CEO level of things from the roster. So I'm excited. I think he's good. I think he's young. He's aggressive. He's well-spoken. You listen to him talk about the game. It's impressive. Really excited to see what he can do from a scheme standpoint to tweak a good McDermott defense and make it more aggressive and make it his own. I think and that's why he was chosen, I think.
So you call him for like a breakout year for Kyrie Elam?
I mean, I think I really think they chose a position coach away from him. I do. Like,
that would be nice, dude.
I'm on the camp where I haven't really. He's too inconsistent. I think he's grabby. Like you saw like the best and the worst in literally one drive against the Steelers in the playoffs. The Bills, they don't like that inconsistency, but is he going to focus on it? Is the defense going to be more suited to him? I think so, but he's not playing over Christian Benford and he's not playing over Rasul Douglas. So he's going to take the Dane Jackson role for sure. That's why I think they feel solid at corner.
And so I think I know exactly what you're talking about. Was one play where he got like called for PI. And I was sitting there screaming on my computer. I'm like, Elam, you fucking bum, or whatever. And then like the very next play, he picked the guy off.
Yeah.
I was like, Elam, you fucking god, dude. Yeah, you know what I mean?
He plays good 80% of the time. Seriously, his film's decent. He has like just those lapses, man. The 10 to 20% of, and it's just too much. But it was actually the whole drive. He wasn't in his zone. One play, Deontay Johnson cooked him. And then secondly, he was grabby. He wasn't good, but he was coming off cold in that specific situation, in fairness to him. But he just doesn't ever seem like he can take that next step and be prepared when he's supposed to be in film rooms and everything else all season, getting ready for his moment. It just always seems like there's a lag, but then he flashes that true first round pick talent that the Bills are hoping to tap into, at least making him AJ Epinesa style of contributor. At least like maybe when he's up, people will want to re-sign him level.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, we saw that Micah Hyde is still doing his charity softball tournament in the city of Buffalo.
Big news.
Super cool from his perspective. And it sounded like Bean was teetering with the fact that he might retire. But some people, like Kevin, he believes that this means that we might be seeing a return of Micah Hyde. And I'm not going to lie to you, probably wouldn't be upset with that. Kevin, what do you think about a potential Micah
back
Hyde
to me?
return? Will it happen? Would you be okay with it?
Let you guys pick this one up next, but I don't know. There was something there that seemed more than just usual. Best of luck, happenstance of you do whatever you want to do. Look, looking forward to his decision. It seemed like there was more there. Like, and definitely it was excitement. You saw him perk up, and you saw like there is like that vet safety role, in my opinion, that could still be there for Rapp and Mike Edwards. So I think that, and then Cam Lewis behind them playing a special teams role, and then whatever happens to DeMar, I'm not sure. But I think that especially they'll know after the draft, if they're not in position, they go center or they do receiver, they do other things. I think that it's increasingly likely that they'll have conversations for the safety. But I mean, it's up to you guys what you think as well on that topic. But I think that if they go a different direction in the draft, I think the safety position might come circling back to Micah Hyde, who seemed still connected, but maybe he's done.
I got the same vibe.
Yeah.
And why not? It's lasted this long, so
I wouldn't hate it.
Something
it's
else.
not like that it would break the bank by any stretch of
No,
the imagination.
no.
He's not necessarily like a hot commodity in the safety market right now in free agency, so I can't see him coming for anything more than the vet minimum or slightly more than that. Mario, what do you think about that?
Each day that goes by, every free agent right now is terrified because you get closer and closer to the draft. You're like, okay, and then afterward, if they don't draft the guy they want, this and that, retire, man. That neck thing scared me. Like, I don't, you're still a young guy. You still got the whole life ahead of you. I think that the Bills already re-signed a safety that they shouldn't have signed in Poyer last year, because I thought he was all but in Miami already last year. And we saw how slow he was trying to get over the top of certain plays and this and that last year. I wouldn't be shocked either way, but you tried you had the perfect thing in front of you with Hamlin and Johnson when Hyde and Poyer kind of were in and out of that 1 year in the beginning of the year, and it didn't work out. So what's to say that I trust them drafting a safety anyway? At this point, you got Rapp as a free agent, you got Hyde and Poyer as free agents, and now you have Edwards as a free agent. Can they even draft safeties? Like, come on, man. Like, I don't know. If I was Hyde, I'd retire. But I know if the guy still thinks he's got a little juice left in the tank, he wants to come back. I mean, we're all sentimental here in Buffalo anyway. So let him go. Let him do it.
Could Cole Bishop be the clone that they're looking for from Sean McDermott? I think that's one guy to keep an eye on personally in the draft, that they might fit their style. But I agree with you. I don't know what they're going to do, if they're going to draft a safety or not. I just think that ultimately the vet leadership in the room more than his playing time could be an effect and thing. If someone gets hurt, he knows the scheme as well as anyone. I think those would be the reasons, unless I don't know that he'd be a day one starter.
You could pick him up though. I mean, I don't think any teams are going to pick him up by now. I mean, if 5 weeks into the season, Edwards goes out, hey, we're going to sign Hyde. Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right. Perfect. We can go ahead and knock that out. Well, folks, we are approaching the end of the show, but I wanted to go around the table and I wanted to ask everybody, what is going to allow you to fall asleep at night once the draft concludes? What are your expectations that would make you a happy Bills fan? We'll start off with Kevin for the draft this upcoming week.
I want to keep as many picks as they have. I don't want to ditch them. I don't want to move up. I think they need some cost control players. I don't love moving back. McBean actually uses the fifth year option as much as anybody. I thought I just read 80-something% that either negotiated or used, and he's probably going to use it again here on Greg Rousseau after the draft, as he commented today. I think he cares about it. He's always saying he's going to trade down, but he's got his one last player, Kyrie Elam, one last player trading up for Dalton Kincaid, one last player in Greg Rousseau back. I remember he almost made the same comments for all of them. He's always going to have the one last first round grade. He said there's more this year too, which I think is telling that he's going to stay in this draft and stay in the first round. So I want starters, Dan. I want to draft as many starters as possible. That's very cliche, but just give me two guys that I think can come in and start in this first 2 rounds. And then from there, I want to stockpile, make that offensive line better. They commented on the depth of the D line. Those are the things I'm looking for, and keep those costs controlled in the system. And we need these $900,000 players.
And so what about you, Ziba?
Well, I think the point made there about the first 2 rounds being starters is crucial to me. I'm in the same boat. But for round 1, a week from tonight, it's wide receiver for me. I got faith in Brandon Beane at this point, knowing with where they're picking, with what's available, that whether they decide to make a move up or stay where they're at, the guy that they get is going to be a guy that they wanted. And to me, I just feel like there's some things to me that are just so obvious that there's really nothing else to say. And that's where I'm at with it. I just don't see how you can leave night 1 without a receiver and be happy about it. My happiness level, I guess, will be dictated around the specific guy, but there's no way that I will be unhappy to any degree with a wide receiver hitting the pillow, 3 hours, 4 hours from now, a week from now. So that's where I'm at. And I think that's where we should be. I got to tell you, though, there's part of me that it would just the insane back of my mind part of me that would just love to see what the reaction would be if that did not be the case. But it's so hard for me to fathom it not being that I can't even go there. But that's where I'm at. My happiness is dictated around one more guy in this wide receiver room that can hopefully come in and be a huge impact right away and for the foreseeable future.
I cannot wait until the Bills go with an edge rusher at 28.
Oh no!
And then trade the second and the Minnesota pick that they got for Ayuk. They're going to piss everyone off on day 1 and then make everyone love them on day 2. That's how it's going to be. Personally, for me, we're doing the draft with Drew and Chris from the Rock Power Report. So personally, I'm hoping my liver holds up for the rest of the weekend.
Crucial.
Other than that, but as far as the Bills go, I mean, I'm in agreement with you guys. You got 10 picks. get 4 impactful players. If I will not sleep well if I hear any kind of an analyst say, "Oh, he's a great special teams guy." I will lose my freaking mind if we get special team guys. Like, no, enough, okay? But
they got Justin Shorter.
Yeah,
dude,
he's gonna get a special teams jersey.
Yo, Mario, I have to ask you this: is your audience as obsessed with Justin Shorter as mine is?
I am obsessed with Justin Shorter.
Oh,
are you?
I need a new guy, man. Sear Neal's not here. Dean Marlowe's not here anymore. I always had those guys that don't. Dude, for years, I had Sear Neal and Paul had Dane Jackson. Those were our favorites. And now they're both gone. So I got to pick somebody.
Justin Shorter, man.
I'm just so intrigued by the guy that he barely runs a sub 4.6, and everyone's just in love with him. Like, okay, yeah, he's chiseled out of granite, but can he play? Like, come on. Sheesh.
It's like, oh, Dan, it's guy Diggs is gone, man. We got Justin Shorter, bro. We got to see what he's gonna do. I'm like, bro, that's thank God you're not the GM of that.
What is it? The picture of Batman slapping Robin? Like, when someone says that, that's what you should have.
Oh my God, man. It's for me, guys. I mean, I'm probably setting myself up for disappointment at this point. But I mean, in the first round, it's not only wide receiver for me, but it's like 2 specific names. It's either Brian Thomas Jr. or Ladd McConkey or bust. That's me. It's those 2 prospects. I like them. And so I genuinely believe that Ladd McConkey is like the closest thing to Stephon Diggs as far as like their skill set. And McConkey's a bit faster. He's not a slot guy.
Dan, we had the Raz guy on yesterday who compared his profile to Cooper Kupp.
Which is even better. So, I mean, I'd be happy with either of those 2. And then I also want to find a way to get back into the third somehow, whether or not that's trading slightly down in the second and grabbing a third, or maybe trying to package a couple of the later rounds to get back, because there's quite a bit of talent, especially in interior offensive line right in the third. Like Mason McCormick, I like quite a bit, left guard. I don't even know. So maybe Zach Frazier, West Virginia, or something along those lines too in the third round of something like that. So it's expectations, man.
I think they'll get an interior line. Just a matter of when.
Yeah. That would be absolutely beautiful.
First, second, or fourth.
You'll get an interior O-line. You know, this could be a draft where one of their 5th round picks, they take a quarterback. He's not going to play, but you only got Mitchie Biscuits on a 1-year deal. If you cut this guy, if you get a quarterback and you cut him, put him on the practice squad, no one's going to touch him because no one's ever going to see him.
So you got Mitchie Biscuits?
Yeah.
I like Mitchie Biscuits.
Get rid of Mitchie. Oh, God. He lost his job to Kenny Pickett. Get out of here.
And the guy that was going to go into corporate insurance in Mason Rudolph. So, I mean, I think that may be even worse. Like, dude, a literal guy was in the locker room talking about his corporate insurance job after the season.
Yeah. He's like, I don't know. I've been looking up some corporate insurance jobs, as a matter of fact. I don't know. I mean, apparently he hasn't been budgeting his money too well.
The 5th round quarterback makes sense. I don't think they can let Jake Fromm in the COVID year derail their plans of like trying to get like an $800K quarterback for 4 years does have like a little bit of value.
Yeah.
What's Jake Fromm look like, man?
Where's the backup quarterback market's always like what?
He's still in the league.
8 to 12 million or something like that.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
And you can make an asset out of it too.
Yeah, exactly.
He's backing up
Peterman still have a job?
Mariota in Washington.
Peterman still has a job, yeah.
Peterman he's a savant in the film room, I've heard. Peterman.
Is he?
How else does he survive?
Dude, I don't know.
It's not because I think he's blind. Honestly, I'm going with that. Peterman's actually blind.
He needs some LASIK. Something like that. He's gonna pull a Jameis Winston, something along those lines. Just make it happen.
Something, man.
Oh, dude. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to go around the table so all these guys can let you know where to find them, what they have going on for a busy-ass week. I'm sure all of us have. Starting off with Mario, man.
Yeah, you can find us at hashtag sports, all the socials, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Everything's on iTunes and Spotify. We are going to be going virtual for night 1 of the draft, and we are going to be collabing with the Rock Pile Report, Drew and Chris, live, and it's going to be a dumpster fire, so make sure you tune in for day 2 of that. Other than that, we're gonna be getting back. Paul and I will be getting back in the car very soon to have our discussions and our coffee and our donuts. So stay tuned. Dan probably put the link in the description. So I got some more work for you, Dan. There you go.
Love it.
Thanks for. I was glad I was able to make it tonight, guys. I've been watching the last few weeks, and I really enjoy this stuff. So
Yeah,
glad to be
man.
a part of it.
Yeah, man. Most definitely. I couldn't think of a better representative, my friend. Z-Bop, what's going on with you, brother?
Me and Rico live tomorrow at noon. We're taking your phone calls as well, which has been great. We've been having a ball doing that. So tomorrow at noon, BF YouTube channel. And then we'll also be live for every round of the draft next week, including round 1, where everybody will be together to find out what the hell inevitably happens. I'm so sick and tired of talking about these hypotheticals. Give it to me. We're 1 week away, and we'll be on for it. So excited. 1 week. It's nothing. We're almost there.
Yeah, dude. I'm not going to lie. I'm getting really damn sick of mock drafts. Kevin, what's going on, man?
You guys have all the exciting day 1 stuff going on over there. I got to tune into all of that stuff that both of you have. I mean, it sounds like some great entertainment. I'm actually doing the reverse. I'll be taking day 3 on. I thought they had 8 to 9 picks, now 8. So I'm excited to do full live coverage during day 3 to talk about some of those players, bring on some guests. If you guys are free, you're more than welcome to come on. But we'll be live the entire day 3. So we're looking pretty forward to that. And you can find me at Kevin Masseri as always. So, but I'm going to be tuning into everyone else's stuff day 1 and day 2. My work here is completed, but I'll take up take up day 3. I think it's fun to be on, try to get some of these deep sleepers. Like I remember our live reaction to Khalil Shakir. That was fun. So.
And day 2 is a huge day for the Bills. You'll be busy that day.
Last year I had just like 0 picks. They kept trading them. So
it's a long stream, dude.
Yeah.
Long stream for Justin Shorter.
Justin Shorter.
Well, that's why you don't like him. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle on Justin Shorter. It's actually Dan that has his individual.
It just blows my mind where people are just like, Dan, listen, man. So Diggs is gone, but don't forget about Justin Shorter, dude. He's still in this route. I'm like,
game 3 preseason game.
Game 3 preseason highlights, bro. Absolutely nuts, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you here next Thursday. Later.
Peace.